I'll do a roll call of everybody and then we can launch into this. Rich Berlandi.
Here.
Emily Breck.
I'm here.
Dave Fox.
Here.
Bob Hannon.
I'm here.
Robert Eisner.
Here.
Mark Simpson.
Here.
Ned Stachin.
Here.
Jay Tulin.
I'm here.
Fabulous. All right, Mr. Chair, it's all yours.
Okay, so we'll start the Wetlands Commission meeting off at 7:01. And first item on the agenda is Andre Rainville, Eagle Scout project.
All right, thank you. Nice to meet you all. My name is Andre Rainville. I'm a Boy Scout with Troop 68 from Farmington, CT. I'd like to thank the Conservation and Inland Wetlands for giving me the opportunity to attend this meeting tonight. As a matter of background, I presented this project to the Farmington Land Trust a month ago and received a sign-off. I'd like to tell you about my project. If you may go to the next slide, please. I'm proposing to build a 240 feet long bog bridges. One would be over a wet and muddy section of the Mountain Springs Nature Trail property. The other is over an area that frequently floods on the Bushley Farms, or also known as Carney Pasture property. These bridges are really beneficial to our community. It allows people to explore nature in a manner that is both safe for them and for the environment. Hikers coming across wetlands won't need to come off from the trail, which can harm wildlife or potentially harm the habitat of such wildlife. If you could go to the next slide, please. This project will be completed under my supervision with the help from other scouts and adult volunteers from Troop 68, as well as some personal family and friends. My plan is to start building the bridges by hopefully May of this year. And I hope to have them completed possibly by a June or July timeframe. The the total cost of building these two bridges is roughly $1,600. I'll be paying most of this from my Scout savings, which is collected by participating in Boy Scout related events. And I've been collecting this money over the 4 years. Any remaining balances will be paid from my family donations. Location of the bridge will be at two locations: the Mountain Springs Nature section, which will serve hikers to allow them to traverse a particularly wet and boggy area of the trail. If you could go to the next slide, the second bog bridge will be built on the Mountain Springs Nature Trail property. And again, it is over an area that frequently floods and is a necessary route in the process of getting along this trail. Now, if you could go to slide 6, please, that would be appreciated. Or excuse me, just go back. Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
You want to go there? Or?
Just go forward one, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The design of the bog bridge will consist of two 12 by 12 2 times 2 by 12 by 12 feet long rough sawn oak planks sitting on 4 by 6 by 4 sleepers. We will be anchoring the sleepers with a rebar to prevent them from moving. The rough sawn oak may be replaced by white oak, depending on accessibility. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that's the end of my presentation. If you'd like to contact me, please contact me at the email provided below on the slide. It was a pleasure having you, allowing you to have me on here, and I really appreciate this opportunity. I just want to say thank you.
That's great. Well, stay with us because the commission will ask some questions.
Not going anywhere yet.
Yeah.
I want to say thanks.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, typically what we do at this point in time is we'll ask the commission members if they have any questions that they want to ask at this point in time. So Rich, I'll start with you.
No, I don't have any questions.
Emily?
I have nothing. This is well planned.
Dave?
I don't have any questions. Just wanted to let Andre know that I took a walk on the Mountain Spring Nature Trail last summer with my dogs, and I have never seen so many ticks in my life. So watch out when you're out there. There were dozens on each dog.
Robert?
I don't have any questions. Congratulations on a well planned out project.
Mark?
No questions.
Ned?
It looks like a great project. I know you're using hardwood, so I don't know if you need it, but is that pressure treated?
Yes, it is pressure treated.
Okay. All right. Looks like a good job, and thank you for your service.
Okay, Jay? Jay, any comments? Are you muted?
I was muted. Sorry about that. No, I just wanted to also say I don't have any questions. Sounds like a well thought out plan, and we appreciate you doing this.
All right, I don't really have any questions either. I think it's a good project. However, what I will do is I will give you a little bit of advice from one of the people that I work with at the state. I think Robert Eisner knows this person well, as does Dave Fox. But Fred, whenever he goes out on projects like this and he's walking, he tends to go out and buy a bunch of like the Hearts tee and flick collars and puts them on the bottom of his legs, on his pants. So I don't know if that's something you want to consider, seeing as how Dave made the comments about how bad the ticks might be out there. And I know that we're now getting into tick season, so just be careful on that. Whoever's out there working, everybody needs to be careful. But that's my only comment. But again, I think it's a good project. And I'll throw this up to commission members. Typically on these types of projects, I believe we have allowed them as a non-regulated activity in accordance with Section B. So just go around to everybody once again, just to get your flavor on that. So Rich?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Emily?
Agreed.
Dave?
I agree as well.
Robert?
Yes, I agree.
Mark?
I agree.
Ned?
I agree.
Jay?
I agree also.
And I also agree. So can I get a motion to determine this as a non-regulated activity in accordance with Section B4?
So move, Stanchion.
Is there a second?
Dave will second.
A second.
So pretty much had the discussion, so I'm just going to go straight to the vote. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Andre.
Okay, Shannon, number 2, I guess, has been withdrawn. So the whole application was withdrawn?
Correct. Mr. Van Voorhees has decided he needs, he's going to think about this a little more to determine what direction he really wants to go
Okay.
with this. And then we'll likely see him back at some point.
Okay, but he has formally withdrawn.
Yes, I have it
Okay.
in an email from him. Yep.
Okay, good, thank you. Next up, Newport Realty Group LLC, 8677 Plainville Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I'm Christian Hoeb on behalf of the applicant Newport Realty Group. With me this evening are Mark Lovely and Anthony Valenti, who are the principals of the applicant. Also with me is Andrew Quirk and David Lord. You'll recall that this application was accepted April 21st. Our site walk was completed just this weekend on May 1st. Andrew staff was incredible in requesting information back, and Andrew Quirk responded to those engineering comments of the 30th, and he's prepared further responses and answers to provide the commission with more information. And so in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Quirk, and then I presume the commission will have questions. So without any further ado, Andrew, are you there?
I am. Andrew Quirk, professional engineer with Kratzer Jones and Associates, for the record. Yeah, thank you all again for coming out for the site walk. There were a lot of insightful comments that I think are going to really help the project and help to try to reduce any wetland impacts that we have. I guess just looking at the sheet E1, just to summarize our walk, again, we began at Laurel Lane, walked the sewer connection location coming up between 8 and 9 Laurel Lane. Then we generally followed the orange line on that plan, which is the 150-foot buffer line, and came down and around to the crossing. And Shannon, maybe if we could switch to the second sheet, I think that shows the development. So that same line where we came down along the rear of those units, and we followed the berm of the detention basin. And then if we could zoom in there, Shannon, I don't know if that's possible in that southeast corner where it overlays the contours and the open space area. I think this shows pretty well where previously we were coming directly from the detention basin going straight east. We were up near the spillway in that area. We were going straight or northeast, and we were going right down the contours that were that steeper area. And instead, we're going to follow the berm and go around that knoll, following those gentle grades down to the crossing. I think that's going to be a much better location, and that was due to the comments by Bruce here about the grades, and I think this is going to be a lot better this way. And then at the crossing, we did add to the plan some notes based on feedback that we received from the site walk at the crossing. Unfortunately, the color doesn't show up too well on the screen, but it indicates what we discussed about in the field, where we would install a 12-inch HD high-density polyethylene pipe, or it could be light and brought down there, and either with hand tools or small equipment like a bobcat or a mini excavator, just try to lift those brownstones enough to slide the 12-inch pipe through, and then rest the brownstones back, and that would ensure that the flow underneath that land bridge continues should there be an issue with the brownstones, or to prevent an issue with the brownstones collapsing. Also, there were some comments about some of the debris up gradient from that crossing, some fallen trees and things that could obstruct flow. So same thing there, we would remove those objects that would, remove the debris from the site, and anything that would obstruct the flow, some of those trees, at least move those to the side away from the flow pattern so that they don't obstruct the flow. That's the summary I have from the site walk. We did try to address many of the engineering and planning comments. I will say that the review, I did discuss with Bruce here that the review included a number of comments that were non-wetlands, and we appreciate that, because that helps us work through the plans to completion for all the permits. But in the package, you probably see a number of responses that say there's items that are not addressed, and in large part that's due to items that we just haven't addressed yet, but we would address through zoning. But I'm happy to go through any of those that the commission would like. Again, the permit would be for, I believe it's on the next sheet, Shannon, the 22 square feet, excuse me, 22 square feet of direct wetland impact, and the 0.7 acres of upland review area impact. I believe it's sheet 4. Yes, so the orange shaded area is that upland review area impact, with, again, generally about 1/3 of that for the sewer construction, 1/3 associated with the rear yards of the homes, and 1/3 for the stormwater basin. And then just the 22 square feet of direct wetland impact at the end of that existing culvert where the sewer crossing comes through. We also did include, I believe it's sheet 6, a separate plan and profile with details for the sewer crossing in response to the comments. Should be, yeah, one more, page 6. So with that, I think that would conclude any presentation I would have at this time, and be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. Chris, did you want Mr. Lord to make any comments, or I don't know if you want to do that to sort of consolidate your side's comments, and then we can ask questions to either of them, or how do you want to propose, how do you want to go forward with this?
I don't see David Lord here, but I think he responded to any questions at the site walk, and I'm not sure he had any new information. Is that true, Andrew?
Yeah, I did receive an email from him, and unfortunately he wasn't able to make it at this time. He might be able to join in at the end, but he had a conflict.
Okay.
But he did submit the soils report, the impact assessment, and I don't believe he had any new information other than those items and the information from the site walk that he was going to discuss.
Okay, no, that's fine. Then we'll go to the commission members. So Jay, I'll start with you on this one. Comments, questions?
I don't really have any specific questions other than, and I don't know exactly where this would fit in. It just occurred to me, does the open space portion of this project need to come before conservation? Maybe that's a moot question, but it occurred to me after I left Saturday. That's the only thing I was curious about.
To the Conservation Commission?
Yeah.
It doesn't have, so the Inland Wetlands Commission can request that a conservation easement be placed over the,
okay.
And if it was, it doesn't fall under the subdivision umbrella in a traditional sense because it's a senior active adult. So it is a zoning provision. I don't believe there's a required referral back to conservation for that.
Okay.
I'd have to read
okay.
the
I might be thinking about my Middletown past more when I think of that. That's fine. It just was something that crossed my mind. Otherwise, sure. I don't have any questions. Okay. The other thought I'll have, I'll save till the end.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ned.
Yeah, I would want to know if the applicant is open to a conservation easement that we see. I would do a recommendation in the town to like how. I don't think we need to go a lot, very far. I think we just want to have a little bit of a buffer between, the edge of the wetland and the backyards. So I think there's, room for, I don't think the conservation easement has to go right up to the end of the backyards. I'm thinking somewhere between 25 or 50 feet off the line. So that's one of my questions. And then I just wanted to confirm that I know there's going to have to be a lot of tree removal for, because these are kind of compacted houses. But like in the areas where you have backyard to backyard, since you have two locations here with it kind of this S roadway and other places, are they going to try and leave as many of the original trees in place as they can?
Andrew or Chris, do you want to address that question from Mr. Stachin?
Absolutely, yeah. I wasn't sure if we were taking them all and then going back, but I believe it's sheet 3 of 6 shows the the clearing limits, and we were trying to keep between, same thing where we have those units that are back to back to try to keep some of that natural vegetation that's there as a divider between those units. Also throughout the entire perimeter, we're keeping all the areas that are outside of the light green are depicted as existing vegetation to remain. And some of those are also driven by the zoning requirements. Along the northerly property line, we have a 40-foot required zoning buffer. Although that's not within the upland review area in terms, to answer your question, in terms of preserving vegetation, that'll be preserved. There'll also be about 7.2 acres of open space per the zoning requirements that needs to be assigned and dedicated as open space. That includes the 1.97 acres of wetlands on the property. So we could, in addition to defining that line that would be open space for zoning, we could have that same area have a conservation easement in favor of the town for further protection and enforcement. That would be probably at least 100 feet from the wetlands, would be part of that open space area. That could be also protected by a conservation easement.
Okay. And then where you're coming off of Laurel Lane for the running the sewer line, we had discussed whether or not it would be a better idea to try and extend that pipe either below the sewer. No, the sewer line was going to run underneath the stream. So would it be better to extend that pipe, or would it be easier just to leave the pipe as is and just put in a riprap pad there?
Talking about the stormwater pipe, right, Ned?
Stormwater, yeah, pipe right near Laurel Lane. We were talking about a little bit. We had some thought about extending that pipe below, so there wouldn't be a conflict of the sewer line and the stream. You would be, protected by extending the pipe. But I don't know. I'm not really sure what the grade elevation differences are between the sewer and the stream. But I just wondering if they had given any more thought to that.
Sure, great question. A couple things that came up through the site walk. The plan as it is now is to keep that pipe in its present location. It will be disrupted during construction, so we'll have to reset a section of pipe there at the end, and then have the riprap installed at the outfall at the current location. Couple reasons that we're not able to extend it. One is that immediately along the bottom of that sheet, at the edge of the solid green hatch is a property line between lot 8 and 9. And so we don't have the right to extend that further and do work over the property line. And there's not a drainage easement beyond what's on for this pipe. And I think the idea was at the time, and would still hold true today, is that when you have wetlands or you have an intermittent water course, there's inherent rights of flow. So you don't need a drainage easement, but we would need a drainage easement if we're extending the pipe onto someone else's private property. So there's some property limitations there in terms of extending it further. Also, the wetlands do start to open up at that point. There is that triangle and they open up. And so, if we extend it down, we would be, we would be increasing the wetland impact. And I'm not sure it would be really necessary as opposed to just trying to control the erosion at the outfall. There will be 3 feet of cover between over the sewer pipe upon construction. So there should be a sufficient protection of that sewer pipe, especially by installing the riprap and providing that protection at the surface. And the sewer pipe itself is going to be 10 feet off the property line. It's a 20-foot easement, so the pipe itself will be 10 feet off the property line. And the end of that 30-inch corrugated metal pipe is almost exactly at 10 feet off the property line as well. So I guess it's not as if there's an extended flow over the sewer line. It's literally at the outfall location.
Okay, that's fine. 3 feet of cover should be plenty.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's all I got. I think I'd like to hear what the other commissioners think about the conservation easement. before maybe asking him officially. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mark?
Yeah, I agree with Ned. I think the conservation, that was one thing, the conservation area. And I agree with, I think, more of Andrew, making it more of closer to 100 foot. My concern is this area has been undisturbed because it's been, you know, you would have to go through somebody's yard. Now these people have access to the backyard and maybe walk around areas where they shouldn't. So some conservation area that would have medallions to signify to them this is not an area for them to wander about and stay on the trails that the project will provide. And the other thing is, I'm glad that they're going to clear the debris around the bridge. Seems to be a little bit of silt buildup around one side of it, and maybe that will help it flow better and allow it to the water to flow over to the other side easier. Other than that, I'm fine with this project.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
Just first, an apology to my fellow commission members. I intended to make the site walk on Saturday, and then life disruptions happened. I was not able to make it. Shannon, I may need help on this question for the applicant. There are still some unresolved engineering department comments. Are those known by the applicant, and are there any concerns addressing any of the remaining engineering department comments? And if there is not clarity on what's outstanding, then Shannon may need to jump in.
So I'll jump in to start if that's okay. The applicant purposely waited until after the site visit to submit the updated plans and response to comments. Bruce was able to take the time to go through them today, and he and I literally went through it together 3:30 to 4:30 today. In general, we think everything's will be okay. We're used to seeing the stormwater system designed in a little more detail than what is currently shown with respect to the water quality treatment and the stormwater detention system. With that said, the applicant has shown that there will be a 4-bay area and protection around the outlet and I believe a micro pool in the center. Typically, we'd like to see an outlet control structure so that there is some detention here, and we don't have enough information at that particular point in time. The other thing that was of note was the perimeter erosion control here. The silt fence was removed and silt sock was installed. I think due to the slopes that we're looking here, we'd like to see both the silt fence and silt sock at this location where you're butting up to the wetlands. So those are the items that are standing out to me from my conversation with Bruce, but has moved in a positive direction with respect to the addressing of comments.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah. So Andrew or Chris, any response on the staff comments, sir?
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments and the feedback, and I did not see anything in the comments that we will not be able to address. There were no comments that we objected to addressing, I would say. On the silt fence and the silt socks, yeah, I think I maybe misunderstood the replacement of the silt socks for the silt fence in all locations, but there's no problem in those areas where we're closer to providing both. So there's no problem with that. And we'll certainly continue working with staff to address the remaining comments.
Great, thank you. So on that matter, I think for consideration by the other commission members, I think we would either have to include a condition that the applicant addresses all staff comments to staff satisfaction, or we would have to give a couple more weeks for staff and the applicant to work out the final details. I would be comfortable with, based on the representation, moving forward with a condition that the comments be addressed to staff's satisfaction. With regard to the conservation easement and the discussion started by Commissioner Stanchion, I would support the inclusion of conservation easements for both areas discussed, the residential lots and the open space areas. That's the end of my comments.
And Robert, just to make sure, you're talking about the engineering comments dated April 30th, 2021, correct? I mean, I think that's the latest one, right, Shannon?
Correct.
Okay. And that was done even before we had the site walk, so okay. So if we're going to do that, I just want to make sure that we reference the correct dated document. Okay, Dave?
I guess I just have one question about the crossing of the wetlands with the sewer pipe. How long would the trench be open, and what controls are there envisioned? Like if you get a thunderstorm while it's open?
Great question. That section, we do have a proposed manhole. Maybe if we switch, I believe it's page 6 of 6, shows the plan and profile sheet. And at the top portion on the plan, it shows the, there's a proposed manhole at Laurel Lane, and then there's a proposed manhole to the west, right at the property line. So that section is 200 feet. So, we can work between those structures pretty quickly. We can also cap the pipe, and as part of the approval, we could limit that the section for the installation right at the wetland crossing, that could be, I don't know, we could limit that to being open, for, maybe a maximum of even just 3 days. It's a short section, it's shallow. They could cap the ends, stabilize it, and then deal with the rest of the construction. I would prefer that the construction take place from Laurel Lane towards the site. We always try to connect at the down gradient location and work uphill. The intent is that the construction entrance for this will be from the site. That was one of the comments that came up from engineering, but we are not envisioning a construction entrance from Laurel Lane, but rather accessing this area from the site, working from Laurel Lane towards the site. So once we get across that crossing, it's done. But to answer your question, we could limit that section to maybe 3 days, 3 or 4 days that it's open, and it'd be capped and stabilized so that it's doesn't remain open for an extended period of time.
Will there be some way to bypass the runoff from a thunderstorm?
The area will be secured with silt fence and such, but when that 30-inch pipe is flowing, we could, with an open trench, it's a good point. That's a situation that could be problematic. So we'd want to get that work in a dry condition and get that area with the riprap established, quickly within just a couple of days. Then once that's done, there is some space on the uphill side where we walked, where construction vehicles could get around that area without traversing the wetlands. Just past the pipe, just to the top of the pipe, there's a flat area that vehicles could work around without redisturbing that area. But I think the best thing is to try to get that installed. It's only 3 feet deep, should go pretty quick. Cap the ends and get it stabilized, and then continue with the connections after that.
Okay, thank you. I guess that's all I have. I would be in favor with the conservation easement as well, and if they're offering 100 feet, I guess we should take it. That's
Okay, thanks, Dave. Emily?
This has been pretty thorough. I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
No, I would agree with the limiting the duration of the construction at the sanitary sewer crossing and making sure that that disturbed area is protected from scour, and I also support the conservation easement. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Question for you. What do you anticipate in your trenching linear feet per day?
That can vary quite a bit. Mark, you might even have a better idea than I would in terms of that. When this section from Laurel Lane through the crossing is pretty flat, it's relatively shallow. That should go pretty quick. But then we do go uphill, as you saw from the site walk. So those sections are going to go much slower. We have a project under construction right now. They have to extend it 8 feet, and they hit a rock that they have to hammer out, and it's taking them a week to go 8 feet. So I can say for that section that it's a short window. It's shallow. It's adjacent to wetlands. I wouldn't expect ledge. That should be, you know, I think we can assure that. But other than that, linear feet per day.
Okay.
Mark, maybe you can give some more insight, but it varies tremendously.
Maybe, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners, Mark Lovely, principal with Newport Realty Group. We actually just did this in Sullyton in these same type of soils. And we worked with town staff in Sullyton. I would expect to do the same thing in Farmington, where we had them out there to inspect. So we're really able to come through this. This first section past to the first manhole, we can build in one day. So we can get over that 200 feet in one day. And then what I want to try and do with this is get that 200 feet to that manhole, stop, and then come in and get the wetlands re-established. So within a 2-day period, we would be in and out of here. So we would have the inspectors there. So even we would look at doing this and look at the weather and do it in a dry time. If we seen there was going to be rain like we just did in Sullyton, we would hold off on that section starting it. But our idea is to come in from Laurel Lane, get all the way from manhole to manhole in the first day, and by the next day get that back established, and then start working our way in with the construction equipment from the back end from the property instead of using Laurel Lane, so we don't disturb the neighbors or anything there.
Thanks. Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's a procedural question in the chat. There's someone asking how many participants in the hearing. So you may want to clarify it's a meeting, not a hearing, and identify the number of Zoom participants.
Well, I know we've got
Zoom says 28.
Members.
Yes, so we've got 28 people that are on the call in total.
And it is a regular meeting. It is not a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I now see David Lord is present. So I'm not sure if you or any commission members have any specific questions for Mr. Lord.
When I raised his name earlier, it was just a question as to whether or not he had any additional information he wanted to offer. If he doesn't, that's fine. But thank you for the notice.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is David Lord. I was just concluding a Zoom meeting in Bristol, so I just signed on here. No, I don't have any additional information to present to the commission at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess some of the questions that I had, we addressed in the field. I was curious about the sanitary sewer line coming from Laurel. I know we had a conversation regarding the crossing of that wetland area and how some of it doesn't look as though it's all that stable. So I'm not sure getting a piece of equipment there to raise it up a little bit to be able to get a 12-inch pipe. I don't know how easily that'll work. But again, my issue, or at least the concern that I raised, was not so much for the stormwater, but more an issue of if people are using that as a way to cross over from where the development is to where the pathways are, the last thing you want to do is have that collapse. So part of my thought process was you probably want to take a look at the stability of that. Looks like brownstones that were used to cross the wetlands many years ago. I mean, that was the biggest issue I was raising there. I mean, I don't see much with the stormwater. So I don't really have any other questions associated with this. So I think most of my questions were basically answered. I know one of the things when I was talking to one of the principals was a question about, you know, what are they going to be doing with the trees? And my understanding is that there would be some type of contractor hired, I'm assuming a forester, to be able to go through, identify the trees to come down, and some of that lumber may actually be sold off. I would much rather see that than everything chipped and, you know, left outside or things of that nature. So that was another issue that we discussed. So that sounded like that they thought through the process and they've utilized that tactic before, so that's fine. I don't really have anything else. I know one of the things that we need to do is we need to take a vote on whether or not this is or is not a significant activity. And the second thing would be whether or not people are at a point where they're willing to vote on this tonight, or if there are still some concerns in terms of some of the engineering comments and trying to get those resolved before we go forward. So the first thing I want to do is go through and ask commission members. And again, Jay, I'll start with you as to whether or not you think this is a significant activity or not. Jay, I think you're muted.
Where is it, Jay? There we go. Jay,
are you calling on me?
Yes, Jay. Yep, go
Just
ahead.
trying to find out whether you think this is a significant or a non-significant activity.
I was thinking it was significant. I don't know what the other folks, I don't know if you're starting, I was away for like 5 minutes. I was thinking just, and I don't know if this is logical, just inherent in the scope of the project, I think it's significant.
Ned?
I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, obviously it's a significant project with 61 units, but in regards to how it's affecting the wetlands, they're you know, staying at the very edge of the wetlands, the 150-foot mark, and, you know, they're avoiding any construction within that point. So there is going to be a little bit of construction, you know, for the sedimentation basin, but I don't know, I can go either way. But I guess I would lean toward it being significant.
Mark?
I kind of on the fence too. I know there's a lot of areas that could be disturbance, but I'm more inclined to lean towards the non-significant because of the lack of, not lack of, but the sewer line is pretty much the area where there would be some disturbance to the wetlands, and I don't know if it's enough impact to say this needs to be significant.
Okay. Robert?
I'm on the same side of the fence with Mark. I think very clearly this is a regulated activity. There is work in the buffer zone, but because of the pre-planning and the design to minimize any impact on the wetlands, the majority of the work is outside of the regulated area with some fringe work. So I think it's clearly a regulated but non-significant activity.
Okay. Dave?
I think I would agree with Robert's assessment. It's obviously a significant project, but in terms of impact to wetlands, as listed in our regulations, it doesn't look like it hits any of the A through H significant activity parameters. So I would think that.
Okay, thanks. And Shannon, this is a question to you. I mean, I'd like to at least see what Emily and Rich are thinking on this, even though they can't vote.
I think that's fine.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not stepping on toes here.
No, they don't have a vote, but I think as part of this discussion with the commission, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. So I would say that it is colloquially significant. I can't imagine this is not significant in the way people use the word ordinarily. In terms of the scope of our charge, I think it would qualify as not significant.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, and I'm on the same side of the table that I do not think this is a significant activity. Although the scope of the project is large, I think there's not a significant impact on the wetlands. I mean, they've done a pretty good job of designing around what the site would offer. And I think we have very few spots where they're even within the 150-foot setback. So, and the crossing for the sanitary sewer line, that you could have on just about anything. So I don't see that as a major issue. So what I would like to do, at least at this point in time, it sounds like the majority of folks feel as though this is a non-significant activity. So if I could get a motion to that effect.
Mr. Chairman, before we call the vote, I just want to make note of the fact that there is another comment in the chat. So you may want to just make it known for the record that this is not a public hearing. So we are seeing the comments that are coming through the chat. But I just want, perhaps, you or Shannon should address any members of the public that are listening in.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so, Mr. Chair. This is fine. These are new business items. This is not a public hearing, and the comments in the chat are not recorded. So the commission is reviewing the application based on its merits, and we'll move forward accordingly.
And we're also working through the wetland regulations, and that is what our charge and scope is all about. But thanks, Robert, for bringing that up. I had not seen that last comment. So at this point in time, though, I'd like to get a motion that this is not a significant activity based on the majority of comments I heard from commission members.
So moved, Mark.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments on this? I know there were a couple of people that said they could go either way. I just want to, if you have any additional comments, Jay or Ned?
Not really. I mean, I'm just to clarify, my comment was in regards to the scope of the project, and I guess, and I kind of looked at the definition of significant impact, and I was kind of on the fence. But just for the record, I would go along with the non-significant.
Okay, and Ned.
Thanks for letting me speak again.
Yep. And Ned, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I kind of, I don't know. I think about the amount of clearing that's being done here, and I understand that we're outside 150 feet, but it's still it's a very sizable project, and I do think it is a significant project, a significant effect on the area.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor and seconded that this would be considered a non-significant activity. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I think it sounds like it's a 5-1 vote, so that it is a non-significant activity.
Correct.
Okay. I guess the other question then comes about, how do people feel about the application tonight? Do you feel comfortable voting on it? Do you want to wait until all the comments are addressed? So Rich, I'll start with you.
No, I'm comfortable that that Shannon and town staff can address the comments. From what I've heard, it sounds like that there's nothing that the applicant is having a disagreement with. So I would be comfortable moving ahead.
Thank you. Emily?
I am fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
If there's, I think I would be more comfortable being able to look at this a little bit more closely. Like the map, the plan that we're looking at now is different than the one we had before, particularly in relation to the detention pond, addressing the engineering comments that do have a Form A, and, you know, the outfall, and they had the better mapping of the crossing that we didn't get to see. So I would prefer taking a closer look and giving them more time to more completely address the engineering comments as well.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
In light of the discussion that we've had, that clearly this is a significant development of the site, well, it's not a significant regulated activity or a significant impact, I think it would be prudent to allow staff a little more time to complete their comments and work with the applicant to get those fully addressed. And we also raised some issues today with drainage and stormwater management and inclusion of conservation easements. So it'd probably better to allow some additional time to work out all of those details and act on this at our next meeting. That would be my preference.
Okay, thank you. Mark? Mark muted?
Mr. Simpson.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
You are correct. That's why you're the chairperson. You're very knowledgeable. I agree that with Robert and others who seem to have concern, and I probably would love to have more information. It is a major project, so I don't see any need at this point to, I can see we can wait and get more information if need be.
Okay, thank you. Ned?
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate to give the designer more time to work on the comments that the town staff has made, and then we can really evaluate the, how well they've addressed the town's comments.
Okay, thanks. Jay?
And excuse me, and it would give her a little more time for us to think about, what we're looking for a conservation easement, and maybe the town can have some input on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jay?
Yeah, I agree that we could probably give them a little bit more time, although it seems like, they've been favorably addressing the comments. It did sound like there might have been a few things that were outstanding, and give us a little bit more time to think about the easement and stuff like that. So I would agree that we should maybe wait till the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think I'm in the same boat. I mean, there are a lot of comments on the April 30th. I'd like to see a lot of that stuff get buttoned up, so we're not looking at nearly that number of items that are sort of outstanding. So Shannon, we don't really need to do anything else at this point in time, correct?
Correct. Nope. So they've Andrew and Chris, unless anyone has any questions, no. The commission is certainly within your right to not proceed with a vote this evening.
Yep.
Been clear on the significant activity. If there's any questions, and clarification the applicant needs, then I think that would be appropriate to provide that, but I don't think there's anything else.
Yeah, I think all of us would just like to make sure that, issues raised by staff are addressed. Again, the conservation easement area, that's something to think about a little bit too. And there are a couple other things that were discussed tonight that need to be incorporated into the plan. So I think that's probably the safe way to go, and put this on the agenda for the next meeting, because that would end up, I believe, about being the first item, unless there's something newer coming along.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be 2 weeks from tonight. So the 19th.
And Mr. Chairman and Shannon, I would just note that there continues to be some public comment coming through chat, which, you know, okay.
I don't know how to be more clear than what we have. It's not a public hearing. The chat is not being recorded. I don't know how to be more clear about that. The commission is making the decisions based on the regulations of the Inland Wetland Commission.
Understood. Just working through the chair to make sure that we're creating a level of transparency on the procedure we're using. Thank you.
Certainly.
And again, I think some of the issues that are being raised are not necessarily wetland issues. They may be more appropriate for planning and zoning.
On behalf of the team, thank you for your time this evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for continuing work with town staff. It's appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for all your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 10110 LLC, 281 Farmington Avenue. And this is a new application, correct, Shannon?
Correct. Yes, this is the first time we're seeing this, and I believe we have Jim Cassidy on the phone to discuss the project with the commission.
Yes, for the record, my name is Jim Cassidy, a professional engineer and principal with the firm of Halsey, Pearson & Cassidy, located at 630 Main Street in Cromwell, Connecticut. Here tonight representing 10110 LLC, who is the owner of the building located at 281 Farmington Avenue. Is it okay if I could share my screen, or would you prefer to keep control?
No, sorry, we don't. For the public meetings, we don't do that.
Sure, no problem. So the first photo you have up is actually, could you go back one page, Jen?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the title. Go back to page 2. I'm sorry. Okay. So the first plan you have up is the existing site survey that was submitted as part of our package. Technically, there are 2 buildings on the property. The property is accessed off of Farmington Avenue. To the north or to the left is going to be the entrance to Yukon Health Center. The actual driveway entering into the site is not on the property. It's on property of the state of Connecticut with a curb cut off into our site. This is access. The other building, which is on the right-hand side, is the Farmington Associates Dental Group. And the building on the left, which is the building we're talking about, is the former, I can't remember the name of the architect's office, but it's now occupied by Connecticut Wealth Management. This is the building that we are talking about. What they would like to do, Shannon, if you can go one more page forward, is off on the left-hand side of the building. There's presently 6 parking spaces. What they would like to do is to remove those parking spaces, and within that triangular area, if you can go one more page, they would like to be able to put an outdoor seating area for clients that are coming in, have seats and basically a fire pit out in that area. Shannon, can you go one more page? So the area shown in the, we'll call it brick color area, would be a new paver patio area that we're looking at constructing. Because of the topography out there, the front parking is higher than the rear parking. So what we'll be doing is along the north side of it, we'll be building a small retaining wall that will be extended up about 24 to 30 inches above the ground, above the patio area. So it also act as a seat wall. That seat wall will go around the entire circumference of that paver area all the way back into the building. At the back corner where the hand is now, there will be a small set of steps that will bring you from the patio down to that rear parking area. In addition to the walkway in front of the building is presently a paper walkway. It ends at the parking spaces. We're going to be extending it and wrapping it around, offering access into this new paver area. To accommodate it, as I mentioned, we actually have to remove 6 parking spaces. So we're actually removing approximately 1,291 square feet of existing bituminous surface. And in its place, we'll be building the new patio, which has an area of about 1,949 square feet. So you're looking at an increase of about 700 square feet of patio area. It is going to be a paper patio. Shannon, can you go, I think, one more page down? Let's go one more page beyond that, if you can. So the way this patio is going to be graded, it'll start level with the upper floor, the first floor level, I should say, of the existing building. There'll be a new access way off the left side of the building into the paver area. And then the patio will be cross-pitched in basically an easterly direction, northwesterly direction towards that seawall at a gradual grade of anywhere from about 1 to at a max of 2%. Because the area where the hand is now, that whole perimeter of the seawall becomes the lower spot. What we're proposing to do is put a trench drain in that area to collect any runoff from this paver patio. Presently, the way the drainage is handled with the parking lot is there's a paved leak off between the upper parking lot and the lower parking lot, and the water from the upper basically sheet flows across the lower and then into the catch basin that you can see on the upper portion of the screen. What we're proposing to do with the trench drain is we'd run a new pipe from the trench drain. We had to cut a path or trench into the parking lot and then tie 6-inch PVC into that catch basin to accommodate the water from the patio area. We'd be also installing a new curb, continuing the granite curb along the where the former parking spaces were. And then the runoff would, from the front upper parking area, would follow along that curb around the corner island, then continue into the catch basin at the back. What does this mean? If you see the red line on the plan, there is a wetlands area that's just off to the north. Actually, the majority of the wetlands, go back a page there, back one more. The teal color line is the wetlands line that we've taken from the town GIS mapping. With the 150-foot regulated area from that wetlands is represented by the red dash line on the plan. So for the development of this patio area and the storm drainage improvement, we need to conduct a regulated activity within the 150-foot area. The first activity you're seeing would be the trenching for the pipe. And I believe that area worked out to be about 359 square feet in total. In addition to, Shannon, if you can go back a couple pages, it's blown up a little bit more, so it's easier to read. Yeah, so I'm sorry, the trench within the regulated area is actually 366 square feet. And then the other activity would be the creation of the corner of the patio and the stair and a little walkway that goes down to the lower parking area, which has an activity of about 219 square feet. Again, most of this activity is an existing disturbed area. It's an existing paved parking lot. The way we were looking at this is we were actually removing about 1,291 square feet of what I'll call, I don't want to call it dirty pavement, but pavement that cars would be parking on. It would be maintained in the winters with salts and possibly have vehicles that park there that could be dripping fluids. So that area of pavement would be removed. The new patio that would be constructed, again, having an area of about 1,949 square feet, would be an area of what we call a clean surface, whereas it's not maintained in the winter. During the winter months, they would not be using this area, no vehicles parked on it. And therefore, there'd be no winter protection or application of salts in this area. So we saw it as an enhancement of the area and reducing the amount of actual car parking pavement for this proposal. In addition to, the one thing that we really don't address on this plan is erosion and sediment control. The overall activity disturbance is very minor. It's less than 5,000 square feet between the walk and the trenching and everything. I think the only thing we can really propose here for an erosion and sediment control measure would be to install some type of a silt sack within the catch basin that we're tying in to, in the event that there's any erosion from the disturbed area for the patio that occurs during the construction process, or the trench that occurs during the construction process. With that, I'm going to conclude my presentation and gladly answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Jay, I'll start with you. Any questions, comments?
No questions right this second, but we'll see. Thank you.
Okay, Ned?
I just want to clarify. So the parking area on the Route 4 side, that just runs off the edges, or is there catch basins on that side as well?
Could you go back to the existing condition survey, Shannon? So back about 4 pages. Can you just blow up on that area a little bit? Yeah, so from the parking spaces presently on the Route 4 side, that's the high spot. It's flowing kind of to the, we'll say to the north. Those parking, we see 6 parking spaces on the opposite side of those spaces. There's a leak off right there that goes down into the lower parking area. Okay. That's how all the water, basically from those 6 spaces getting down. When we developed this area, I removed those 6 spaces, okay? I removed that leak off. When we develop it, we're going to create a new curb along the edge of the patio area. Therefore, the water that's running from those parking spaces along New Britain Avenue would follow down along the curb line. We check the grade along the whole way. There's adequate grade to make sure the water continues to flow all the way down there. So that cross edge area is pavement that's being removed.
Okay.
So the water's going to still flow in the same direction, still get to the same catch basin. The only thing is, again, a parking area, you have about 1,250 square feet less of paved parking area.
Okay, and is the new pipe you're installing, is that a straight pipe or is that a perforated pipe?
It'd be a straight pipe. It'd be a rigid PVC pipe.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Mark?
No questions at this time.
Robert?
Questions?
Dave?
Yeah, it's very little work being done within the regulated area. I noticed the staff comments had talked about maybe thinking about pervious pavers for that patio. Is there going to be any?
So yes, I could address that. A couple things. The primary soil type out there is a Brantford silt loam. It doesn't have a high infiltration rate. So for that reason, and also to consider, basically what happens here is you have a retaining wall built around the entire thing. I don't think you're going to get a lot of infiltration out of it. Again, I thought this overall project was going to be a benefit to the existing condition. You know, it's always good to get rid of parking areas. I know it's impervious coverage, but it's what we call a clean surface because it doesn't need to be maintained, doesn't have the application of salt during the winter time. It would be the preference not to do pervious pavers in this area, just for maintenance purposes, ease of maintenance for the tenants of the building.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Everything is walled off. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Emily?
I have nothing at this time.
Rich?
No questions.
Okay, so I think the first thing we need to do is, can I get a motion to accept the application?
So moved, Statchen.
Is there a second?
Second, Mark.
Thank you. So we have a motion to accept the application. Those in favor of accepting the applications, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Okay, so the application is accepted. I'll toss out my comment first. I don't particularly think that a site walk is necessary for this. The site is pretty well developed. They're just redoing a certain portion of it that happens to fall within the 150-foot setback area. So my take would be, I'm not particularly interested in doing a site walk. But Rich?
No, no, I don't think we need a site walk here.
Okay. Emily?
I definitely do not.
Dave?
Yeah, no need.
Robert?
No need.
Mark?
No need for a walk.
Ned?
No need.
Jay?
No need. The only reason I was even thinking about it is just whenever I hear about tree removal, it kind of gets my hackles up a little bit. But I think it's pretty insignificant, and I don't think we need to do a sidewalk.
Okay, and then the other thing is we need to determine the significance. I mean, I'll go out on a limb, and I just don't think that this is a significant activity. So I do not believe that a public hearing is warranted in this case. So we'll go back to Rich, your take.
Yeah, definitely insignificant.
Emily?
Sorry, I was having a hard time getting my mic going. I'm with Rich.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
Yeah, easy call, not significant.
Yep. Robert?
Not significant.
Mark?
Not significant.
Ned?
Not significant.
Jay?
Not significant.
And Shannon, we do need a formal vote on this, correct?
Yes, please.
So will somebody please make a motion signifying that this is not a significant activity?
So moved by Dave.
Is there a second?
Jay,
Mark.
second. Oh, sorry.
All right, I have a motion on the floor and seconded that this is not a significant activity. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, so no significant activity associated with this. So, and I think that's about all we can do for the evening, correct?
Correct. Yes. So we'll see you back in 2 weeks for the final decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we actually get to the next item when people are still relatively awake.
Yeah, kind of refreshing for a change, huh?
Yes, it is. So next item is show cause hearing 1179 Farmington Avenue. How do we want to approach this one, Shannon? Because I know there's, some additional paperwork that's come in. People have made comments. It seems as though the professionals are pretty much in agreement. So,
as I say, I think we've closed the gap significantly. Unfortunately, George is like triple booked this evening, so I know he cannot be on the phone this evening, but Attorney Galsky is, Ed is. I believe, and I apologize because with these things, this week's been a little more hectic than average for me, but I believe I got this letter from George Logan responding to Ed's review letter of April 21st out to everyone. And Ed's review letter of Monday of this final plan that came in and was emailed out to everyone at the end of last week with the agenda review. And I believe Ed had an opportunity to see George's response. And in that, I had done a site walk, Bruce and I had done a site walk I'm going to say last week at this point. I don't know. I've lost track of my days and whatnot. So last week or the week before with Stanley and Bill out at the property, and gave the green light just for a few things with respect to reinforcing erosion control and getting some protection around the wetland, the standing ponding area. Made some observations that are noted in the email about tadpoles in that standing ponding area to the east, and there were no tadpoles evident in wetland A or in the northern lobe of wetland B. And also getting rid of the bags of invasive species that had been picked last fall prior to everything going to seed. The bags were still there, so gave them permission to start getting all that disposal off site so that the site is more ready for the active mitigation and restoration work. So that's kind of where we are with this at this point. But yes, I would agree that the gap is closed between the consultants and in my opinion, I think we're ready to start to get a shovel in the ground. But we've got Ed on the phone and can certainly hear from him if you'd like, and then from Attorney Galsky perhaps.
Okay, I think I'd like to hear from Attorney Galsky first.
Certainly.
Good evening. I think we're ready to get going. We're obviously facing the season as well. There's a significant amount of work in the upland area. Several acres that need to be weeded out and to get going with the restoration in that area. So I think we've got everything covered. We had a productive meeting out there last week, and Shannon, if you're satisfied with the access to the wetland A as far as doing the restoration in there, I think that was the only thing that we didn't have when we were out there last week.
Is that this representation here, Attorney Galsky?
Yeah, this is the access to come around, right? And Stanley's with me now, Mr.
So it comes off the edge of the, it's coming off here, the edge of the page. Here we go. Okay, I'm getting the full. So that'll be the access road for working. So we're not cutting through wetland A, and there's also protection of this ponding area that currently has the tadpoles.
And we're going to, screen that off with the erosion measures as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because I think one of the issues that we're starting to get into is if the goal is to try to get started on this and get this work in the ground, we don't want to be waiting another couple of months. We start getting into the dry season. So I think that's part of the reason why we're talking about trying to see if we could get this buttoned up for today. So I guess I'm going to go, okay, but before I go on to some of the commission members, Ed, do you have any comments on this?
Can you hear me, folks?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great. For the record, Ed Pollack, soil scientist with Connecticut Ecosystems, consultant for the commission. Yes, I wrote a review letter dated May 3rd, in which I reviewed the 6 revised site plan set of 6 sheets, as well as George Logan's April 29th letter. And I can go very quickly through my comments. I do note that REMA has accepted all of the recommendations that I made in my earlier letter of April 21st. So that's great. That really just, as Shannon said, kind of bridged really the gap that existed between myself and REMA. But I do note at item number 1, and Shannon had that area up on the screen just a little bit ago, a flooded area to the east, kind of northeast of wetland A. That's it right there. Shannon is hovering over it. It's an area that's shaded in. That apparently, that area, if you recall, it's a depressional area. It appears that it was excavated as part of the overall earthwork on the property last year, perhaps to draw water away from the working area. But it has, it's remained kind of an enigma, problematic, because I've seen it holding quite a bit of water, as well as mostly dry last year. But based upon those observations and photographs I've seen of it, it does appear that this depressional area has a seasonally flooded hydrology, and I think a strong argument can be made that it is an intermittent watercourse under the state statute. Now, it's not been delineated as anything to date, but I note that that's my impression, at least that's my professional judgment. And it's serving this spring as a breeding site for American toads. It may be the only area on the site in where toads have been breeding so far, according to what I've heard. So I make the point in number 1 that that the applicant not fill this area. There is language in the REMA letter about filling it or eliminating it once the function's been replicated in the wetland creation area. But I make the point, the reminder that any filling of that depressional area really should come in front of the commission. Determination should be made if it is an intermittent watercourse, and if so, whether a permit is required. But you know, until such time that it's determined to not be a regulated area, I think it's safe to assume that it is. And certainly it's an important area now because it is serving to as breeding habitat for American toads. I think Shannon may have answered the question I posed in number 2. I asked if there was any eastern toad breeding observed in the central portion of wetland A. She said no. Also that there was no breeding observed yet in wetland, northern lobe of wetland B off to the west, right there. So that kind of makes that area that I was just discussing in item number 1, maybe even more important. That's where the toads are breeding this spring. So, you know, I certainly, unless there's a compelling argument and there's no feasible and prudent alternative to eliminating it, I don't see any reason to eliminate it. It's proximate to wetland A. It'll be proximate to the wetland creation area just to the southwest. I see no compelling argument for filling it. It's not out in the middle of the field as an isolated wetland. It's actually, you know, very close to these other resources. So certainly want to keep our eyes on that and certainly not have it filled. Item number 3 in the REMA letter, it clarifies that there will be 3 full years of monitoring after the installation year. So if the wetland work is done this year, that means you'll have 3 years of monitoring following. So it'll be starting in 2022. So that's very good. That's a good, strong monitoring effort. That wetland B, which Shannon, just was highlighting on this sheet just off to the west, it's not labeled on this sheet. And just for the purposes of clarity, I recommended that be labeled, as well as to the west of that, Shannon, if you go just a little further to the left, to the west, there's the, there we are, that's sort of that crescent-shaped flooded area. That's not been delineated yet, but it should be identified on the map as a flooded area. And once again, should not be eliminated until it's been determined whether toads are breeding there and whether it's been replicated elsewhere. In item number 6, I recommended that the limits of the upland review area around wetland A be demarcated out in the field I recommended with wooden posts with medallions or something similar, just something to permanently mark out in the field the limits of the upland review area so that there's no inadvertent, not that Shannon, actually, you know, further to the north, you know, 150 feet.
Sorry, I thought you said wetland A, but you're saying the upland review area. Got it.
Yeah, right, which is not shown right now, I don't think, on that plan. But if it's, you know, the limits of that upland review area should be demarcated. You know, there was, last year there was filling in that area. You don't want to see that happen again. It's much less likely to happen if the limit of that regulated area is demarcated out in the field. Item number 7, I asked the question of what is the material from which that temporary access road will be constructed and what will be its status after the wetland is installed. I imagine it will be removed and restored, but I think you want to have that in writing. Item number 8, under staff comments in the REMA letter, they note that the entire open field, which is kind of shown on the screen right now, it'll be fertilized in accordance with the recommendations from the Yukon soil lab test. And that's contained in I guess in a earlier REMA letter, but it's not contained, it's not found on in this site plan. Or I guess there it is. It's in that letter, which is on sheet 6, I believe, of that site plan set. But it can kind of be buried in there. That should be, I'd like to see that labeled on that sheet that contains the upland review area, just so there's no question that that area will be treated with fertilizers as recommended. And finally, number 9, I piggyback the comments of the commission that you know, the window for doing this work is you know, is going to be closing pretty soon. Right now is an optimal time. You have a high water table. You have you know, sort of a fair amount of precipitation, but that's going to go away once we get into summer. So really, the time to act is now. I think it's everybody's come together, you know, over a period of months, a lot of hard work, but a lot of compromises have been made. I think a good plan has been arrived at, and I'm anxious to see that that work begin as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Attorney Gelsky, you have any comments? You want to follow up on that?
I think the only comment might be to the composition of the work road, and Stanley's with me here. I think that would just remain dirt for now, because it's gonna be a very short period of construction in there, and it'll provide access to get in there and to seed and to water the field as needed. So we're not proposing to put any like stone tracking pad or anything like that down at all. It'll just be you know, just it's been a lot of it's been compacted already. It was compacted last year. So
I think it's possible to seed that. You know, I wouldn't want to see that just remain as a dirt road. I'd like to see that vegetated.
Oh yeah, once the work and the remediation work has been done, then it would be, sure.
Okay, good.
When we were out in the field last week, we had talked about it maybe being further to the west where the old Hall Road was, but it's been moved. It's been moved to the east more. Probably what, about maybe 75, 80 feet from where the old Hall Road was.
Is that north going up?
Yeah, so north, yeah.
Down north, okay, yeah.
That's okay. Away, it was moved further away from wetland A and the slope work that was discussed than what we discussed. So we had talked about hugging it in here closer, but this provides a nice straight line and keeps a nice distance away from all the regulated areas.
Agreed.
Right. So, I mean, Shannon, you know, some of the comments here, it looks like there might be some, you know, relatively minor modifications to the plans, like just some labeling. I mean, that's what it,
Agreed.
It seems like on that. But as far as I can tell, I mean, what I'm hearing, it seems as though a lot of the issues have been hammered out. The one thing that's still sort of outstanding, I guess, is how to treat, you know, I guess what it's wetland B, the two wetland areas off to the west. Yeah, and if at some point in time those end up being filled, is that something that somebody should come back to us before they do that? I mean, looking at that other area that is a little bit what northeast of A.
Right, this one.
That seems like it could still be a fairly important area. So I'd be less inclined to see that being filled, but I guess I'm just trying to figure out in my head what's the best way to try and approach this. Because I agree with Ed, and I know he's agreeing with us that this is the time to start doing some of the work to get it in the ground when conditions are still optimal.
Right.
So, I mean, I personally, I'll go on the hook on this one first and not put anybody else on the hook first. But to me, it looks as though there's been a lot of time and effort put into this. It looks as though we've pretty much come to an agreement on how to deal with it. Some of the slopes, now we've got the access point laid out. So I think we've come a long way. But so I think I'm probably ready to move forward with this. The one thing that I would like to hold off on though is, you know, any filling of those other identified areas, have them labeled on the plans, but also hold off on that until we figure out just exactly how everything is working over in that wetland A area.
Correct. I think that's what we had talked about. The idea was that get this established and make sure, so these areas at the earliest, probably we couldn't discuss filling them until a year from now. Hopefully our toads and other amphibian friends are starting to utilize this restoration area for breeding. And I think that was the goal, is to make sure that the hydrology here is established that will encourage that. And then it would be after next breeding season, be able to consider whether any of these are appropriate for filling.
Yes, I concur with that. Ed Pollack here, I concur with that. By the time those sumps are installed this year in that wetland creation area that Shannon was just hovering over, you know, the toad breeding season will have come and gone. So we won't know, as Shannon said, that won't know until next spring whether though that breeding habitat has been successfully recreated in those sumps.
Thank you. All right, so that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. So just to follow up with other people and get their comments as to where we think we are on this. Rich, any comments?
I kind of agree. It looks like we have a path forward here, and save for the few remaining comments that Ed had, and I think it can be incorporated into the plan to move ahead.
Okay, thank you. Emily?
This feels very complete, very thorough. Thanks a lot.
Dave?
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to thank Ed for all his hard work and coming up with a lot of recommendations that were incorporated into this plan. Pretty complex restoration plan. I'd be comfortable going forward. I think making sure that the demarcation of the upland review area is noted here some way as well, as I pointed out. Thank you.
Robert?
Well, because it's only 8:35, I actually feel like I can ask some questions versus the 10 p.m. meetings we're pushing. But first and foremost, I do want to thank Attorney Galsky and his client Stanley and the professional team, George Logan and the others, because I think a tremendous amount of progress has been made over the months that this has been going through the agenda. We've moved from a conceptual plan to partially completed to what's being referred to as the 100% plan, and countless technical details have been resolved. So I thank those involved and thank Ed for his work in Connecticut Ecosystems for helping provide the information we needed. I have a couple of minor questions. In Ed, one, I guess, would go to you. There's been discussion about removal of the bagged invasive species. And when we did one of the site walks, I had asked George Logan where those are going to be disposed of. And at that time, it wasn't known. Ed, do you have a recommendation on how to dispose of the bagged invasive species? Because I don't want them going into a compost pile somewhere where they could potentially just continue the spread. So Ed, is there a recommendation?
That's a good question. Absolutely, you do not want that ending up, in a composting operation. I mean, if they were to, be disposed with, municipal trash, they would end up, in a landfill or burned, I guess. I don't know if there's any special treatment other than just making sure that they're not composted.
Want me to answer that?
Okay, thank you, Ed. And yes, that's my understanding that there is at least one facility in Connecticut that's a biomass gasification plant that could handle invasive species, but you're correct. If it were to be disposed of as municipal solid waste, it would go to a trash to energy plant where I believe it's an acceptable waste stream because it needs to be destroyed of versus being composted, where it just perpetuates the problem with the spread. So I'm satisfied with that answer, Ed. Thank you. For the rest of the commission, I think I agree we should move forward so that the restoration plan can get underway. I would recommend 2 conditions if we move in that direction. One would be to incorporate the remaining recommendations from Connecticut Ecosystems' 4th letter, the May 3rd letter. We've already talked about what that is for some of the conditions, like Area 1, to make sure that's not filled until the toads have a suitable habitat to move on to, and some of the other technical details. And the other condition that I would put out for consideration by the commission is that I'm pausing because it's not you're not the applicant, but Bill and his clients work with the town staff and follow the directives of the town staff in carrying out the restoration plan. And I think that would mean things like refinement of the soil erosion control installation and maintenance, pre-construction conferences, scheduling. We've already talked a lot about the need to keep things moving quickly so that the wetland plants can take hold during the wet season. And if there's any changes in the scope, I think with dialogue between the project team and town staff, that could be carried out. So that's the end of my questions and comments.
Thanks, Robert. Mark?
Well, I was just thinking about all this, and I feel like we're at a D-Day meeting, should we go forward or not? And I just feel like D-Day wise, we should go forward. Nothing's going to be perfect. I think this is the opportunity. Otherwise, if we delay, we might be into next year further before we even attempt to do this. This is the optimal time, so I'm on board moving forward. But I also am glad to hear the parties talking about what I read, about what they seem to agree to, like fertilization, the removal of the access road for the heavy equipment. All that stuff seems to be they're in agreement. And so what I've seen written and what I'm hearing from them discussing sounds like all parties are on the same page. So I think this is the time to move forward.
Thank you. Ned?
Yeah, I think that a lot of progress has been made so that we're meeting in the middle, and that I think we it's, very important that we get this started. So I would like to act on it this evening.
Okay, thank you. Jay?
I don't have any differing opinion. I've been really trying hard to wrap my head around this. This has been a lot of meetings over a pretty long period of time. And I'm just looking at the language of how this started. And I just want to be clear. We're talking about moving forward with the restoration plan. I guess I want to just be 100% clear what action we're going to be taking tonight, because I'm not really clear what moving forward means, being how this started as a cease and desist without a permit. So that's the only thought I have.
Shannon, you want to take that one?
Sure. So since it's a cease and desist, and I had talked with Darcy Winther at Deep, and she strongly discouraged us from taking an application on this, because it is a cease and desist and an activity that's requiring restoration, that an application would potentially put us into the significant activity public hearing category, which really wasn't appropriate for what we're looking at here, which was, restoration of this top portion of wetland A, and then this mitigation area to make restitution for this work that was done without a permit. So her recommendation is to proceed under the cease and desist. So basically it'll be a motion, should you choose to act on this to allow this to move ahead, would be a motion to accept the plan as presented, and then with the conditions that have been discussed, basically directing me then to lift the cease and desist, and it would be replaced with, the cease and desist has been lifted with the understanding that, as discussed at the meeting, we're moving ahead with this plan with these conditions and this required follow-up. So that's where we are. Does that help and answer your question?
Absolutely, and as a matter of fact, that's exactly what I was stuck on. And I thank you for that explanation. Whether there was an accepting of an application involved in this tonight or not, and you just said that there's not.
No,
so
there
that
won't
makes
be.
perfect. Thank you, Shannon.
Certainly.
That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Jay. And I mean, I made some of my comments earlier. And again, I would like to thank everybody that's been working on this. I mean, this has been a long process, but hopefully what we've come up with is a good solution for the site. Again, I guess it's not so much a concern, but it's more making sure that some of these other potential wetland areas are not filled in without, our agency being directly involved in those dialogues. I don't want somebody to inadvertently turn a bulldozer the wrong direction and fill up those 3 particular wetland areas until we figure out just exactly how this mitigation area is in fact working. And then I think it gives us a better understanding of the site as a whole. So, I mean, that's really the only thing that I've got that's sort of outstanding in my head. But yeah, I would also like to move forward, because I don't want us to be the ones that are causing an additional 6-month delay or longer on starting to go forward with this project. So I think with that,
Mr. Chair, can I add one or two things? Just as far as moving forward, I think there's 2 things I'd like to see. Obviously, staff will continue to be involved. I would like the owner or one of his representatives to continue to provide a status report to the commission at each meeting. Even if it's a brief, these are the action items that have been accomplished. And I think it's important from an accountability standpoint, rather than simply staff providing that report. It can be any part of their team. It could be Mr. Mierzejewski himself, Attorney Glassky, anyone. But I think that's important from accountability and making sure this is moving ahead and all parties are aware of what specifically is being done and how it's been accomplished. And I don't think it's necessary to have Ed there necessarily on a daily or every other day basis.
Yep.
But particularly why this mitigation area is being done, I'm thinking two bit, you know, at a once it's been formed and then once it's planted, but at 2 points, I think I'd like to have Ed on site to take a look and make sure that yes, we're getting what we're getting. It also provides an opportunity that if for some reason things aren't going quite as George thought with the hydrology, it allows the 2 soil scientists to be on site and have a conversation and reach a compromise live rather than constantly having to wait for a meeting. Because I think we do need to allow this to be a little fluid. And so that's my thoughts on that.
Mr. Chairman and Shannon, I'll note that George Logan joined the meeting and sent a chat that he's available.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Shannon a question?
Sure.
Do we need, does it need to be a separate motion to lift the cease and desist and then go on with a motion to accept the restoration plan?
No, no, I don't think that's necessary. One requires the other, right? It's all part of one.
Okay, and I'll ask this of anybody. Does anybody have any specific questions for George? I think we've pretty much covered everything. So I'm not sure that we have anything specific for him.
Mr. Chairman, this is Robert Eisner. I do have a question for George. George, I'm not sure if you were here when I posed a question about where the bagged invasive species will be disposed of. Do you know where that's going to occur?
I did not hear that question, and I think the answer was probably dispose, which means they will probably be put in and landfilled in the bags. I mean, probably by this time, they're pretty much desiccated in the bags.
Okay, thank you. That was the discussion, was that we recognized we wanted to make sure that they weren't going to end up in a compost pile somewhere where the invasive species could continue to spread. So landfill, resource recovery facility, biomass gasification would all be suitable destruction. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so having I think a pretty good sense of where everybody is tonight on this. Does somebody want to take a stab at
I'll take a stab at it. Yep, sure. If you're okay with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll take a stab at it.
I am fine with that, Robert.
I would make a motion to accept the restoration plan developed by REMA Ecological Services to direct staff to lift the cease and desist order at 1179 Farmington Avenue, that the restoration plan incorporate the final recommendations from Connecticut Ecosystems' 4th review letter dated May 3rd, that the project team coordinate with and follow the direction of town staff in carrying out the restoration plan, that the owner or owner's representative provide status reports to the commission on at least a monthly basis, if possible at each meeting, but monthly at a minimum, and that Connecticut Ecosystems continue to monitor at the direction of town staff. And I welcome any other feedback on that.
Let me just ask you a question, because one of the other issues that was discussed was some kind of demarcation of the 150-foot setback area? I mean, did we want to put markers or anything there? Is that something that we think would be advisable?
I think, isn't that recommendation number 6 in the May 3rd letter?
Okay.
I think we're talking about the same thing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. No, that's fine. I just want to make sure that that's covered. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second by Statchen.
Okay. And I think I'm just going to go. Pardon?
Let me just ask, should we, I don't know, maybe it is included by the recommendations, but should we clarify that either the site's holding water, currently holding water, are not to be filled in until approval by town staff and successful restoration or successful creation of the new wetland area?
Yeah, I think that might fall under recommendation 1 of Connecticut Ecosystems May 3rd letter.
Yeah, and I mean, the one comment I would make on that, Ned, though, is I think it's us and not town staff authorizing the filling in of these areas, if in fact we allow it. So, all right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Those in favor of the motion and having this project go forward, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Again, I just want to thank all the parties involved to getting us here to this point. So your time and effort is much appreciated. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you as well, Mr. Chairman, and your staff, and especially Shannon for her input and flexibility and you know, being able to meet out there and guide us along the way. Very invaluable.
We appreciate the work she does, believe me.
All right, thank you. We'll be in touch. I'll get a letter done, and then Stanley or George follow up with a schedule for when we want to start to get going and a pre-construction meeting.
Yes. Shannon, we'll be in touch with you at the beginning of next week to do a schedule a construction meeting and our plan of attack on it.
That sounds great. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night, folks.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Okay. That's the end of new business. Planners report.
Woohoo! Before 9 o'clock. It's the only thing I can think of at the moment that I have for you folks is just to let everyone know. I think those that were on the site walk are aware, but we received an appeal to the decision to the 402 Farmington Ave LLC from both the Fitchmans and the Zatujans. So 2 appeals were filed. They came in, I say last Wednesday, I believe I was served papers. So they've been, excuse me?
You signed them.
I did sign them. Yes. Yeah, I did. I couldn't run away from the clerk. I was kind of cornered. So, so they obviously.
We'll visit you in jail.
Thank you. I don't think I'm being incarcerated for this.
He's not the one that's in the hot seat.
That'd be a site visit.
The rest sounds absolutely delightful. So maybe, you know, just take me. At any rate,
Does that qualify as a site walk or site visit?
We're going to start a GoFundMe account for you, Shannon.
Let the record reflect Shannon was only working at the direction of the commission and under the protection of our regulations.
Oh, so we're all going to jail.
Great.
Or at least the chair might.
At any rate,
I have confidence.
My goodness, we're all a little loopy. So obviously when it's served, Metro was served as well. The documents have been scanned and shared with the attorney. And we're in process of getting all the paperwork put together now with transcripts and whatnot. So as updates are, these processes are quite lengthy, but as there's any updates, I'll be sure to share them. But I thought you'd be interested.
Just to throw something out on this, I think regardless of what our decision ultimately was going to be, I think somebody was going to file a lawsuit on it. And I think similarly, what you have with planning and zoning, regardless of what their decision is, I think there will also be a lawsuit there as well. This was one of those projects where I don't think there was any way to avoid it. So
I agree. Yeah, well, and I think that more importantly, I think the commission was very diligent in processing it. And I think we worked really well with the town attorney to try to make sure that the process was as fair and transparent as we could make it. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, quite honestly, to see whether or not a judge agrees with that the process was proceeded in an appropriate fashion. I think it did. I think we did a really collectively, because I know all of you put a lot of time and effort into this as well. This is my day job. This is what I get paid to do. And yeah, there were hours outside the 9 to 5, but you folks are having to do this. This is extra, and it's a lot to absorb when it's extra. So, we'll see. We'll see where this goes, but I'll keep you updated as updates come through.
Yeah, the one thing that I will ask, Jen, I mean, it's somewhat premature at this point in time, but if this does continue to progress, then there may be some meetings where we have to go into executive session, correct? To discuss strategy, things of that nature.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct. We'll cross those bridges, and then at that point, the town attorney will be party, obviously, to those discussions. So when that takes place.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct. That's it. That's all I got for planner's report.
Okay. So next up, what's on the agenda is approve the minutes of April 21st, 2021. But I believe we should also be including the May 1, 2021 site walk minutes, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the April 21st, 2021 wetlands meeting and the May 1st, 2021 site walk at 8677 Plainville Avenue?
This is Jay, so moved.
Is there a second?
Dave will second.
Any questions, comments, corrections? Hearing nothing, those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose, abstaining? Okay, it's 8:58. We're adjourning inland wetlands, and 8:58, we will start the Conservation Commission meeting. And the first thing on the agenda is other business, land acquisition.
Yes.
Or
canceled.
wait for a meeting.
So we're waiting. The next meeting is May 13th, and we'll hear from them. So we'll hear from them at our 19th meeting.
Okay.
And I do have planners report items. I've got some early numbers for our household hazardous waste collection day. Our shredding is our ability to process documents in Farmington continues to grow. We had 15,000 pounds of shredding, which is by far the most. It was 2 full trucks. The trucks can each hold 8,000 pounds, and that's really pushing the limit. It's always fun when you start to see the sides of the truck bow out a little bit, and I'm watching the tires start to go. So 15,000 pounds of shredding. The green efforts, the cleanup day, 1,900 pounds. So almost a ton, which is a little light, but given current circumstances, it's actually really good. It's about anywhere from 600 to 1,000 pounds less than what they historically do. But really a great effort, again, given current circumstances. And the electronics recycling was also completely out of this world. We don't have the weights yet, but the Green Monster had to make 5 trips with their box trucks back and forth. So there are more, apparently everybody bought new HD TVs and widescreen televisions because there were more televisions than they've ever seen.
Well, I can vouch for almost hurting 2 older men, I'm assuming fathers of some of the kids playing on the football team, that took this big old TV out of the back of our car and tried to lift it up to put it into a box.
Oh my gosh.
I give them a whole lot of credit for that because
wow.
I wouldn't have done it.
No.
My son was there. He's on the football team and he was moving electronics.
Yep. Yeah. So they were.
I got there a little before 8, I guess, maybe about 7:45, 20 of 8. There were already a lot of cars in line, both for household hazardous waste and for the electronics. So yeah, it was pretty busy.
It was definitely a busy day. So we'll get more of the other numbers that'll start to come through, and I'll share them. But and I'm fascinated with the mattress count with our bulk waste pickup. So I'll probably be able to have those numbers for the next meeting as well. So it's always interesting as to the mattresses that get recycled, and that's fun because you can start to calculate the tonnage and the savings on the tipping fees and the mattress pricing. So, and the simple recycling continues to do really well. We somehow manage on average, it's about 4,000 pounds a month, 2 tons of textile recycling monthly, since we started. They shut down for a month or 2 when COVID started last year. But we continue to have about 2 tons of textile recycling every month. So I think that's all I've got.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes of April 21st, 2021 for the Conservation Commission meeting?
So moved, Statchen.
Is there a second?
Oh,
Robert,
second.
Hand up. Were you seconding?
Well, yeah, I seconded, but I also have a comment once we're done with the motion, but I seconded the motion.
Okay. All right. So you have a question, comment on the minutes?
No, it's a sidebar.
Okay. All right. So those in favor of approving the minutes of April 21st, 2021 for the Conservation Commission meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? So it carries.